Chapter 12, Luke's Secret. As I was kicking and paddling back toward Luke, he turned and made a move to grab onto the raft and kick. But due to Luke's weight, the raft tilted below the waterline. When he popped his head up, his legs sank, yet it was still too deep in that part of the pool for him to stand. He started flailing and splashing, his head bobbing up and down. When I realized he was struggling, I swam over to help and he grabbed onto me. I put his arm around my shoulder and kicked as hard as I could to the wall, paddling with my other arm. Once I got him to the side, he grabbed it, coughing. "It's okay," I said. "It was just a scare." "That was so stupid," he said. "I thought I had it." He looked upset along with a little relieved. "The raft just isn't sturdy enough for those big muscles of yours." I wanted to lighten the mood, make him feel better. He climbed out of the pool and sat on a deck chair with his head in his hands. I hopped out too, forgetting all about not wanting to let Luke see me in a swimsuit. I grabbed 2 towels, came back over to Luke, and placed one around his shoulders. When he took it, his thumb grazed my hand, sending shivers up my spine. "Thank you, Stella." He shook his head. "I don't know that I can do this." "Nonsense," I said, playfully slapping his knee. "You were making great progress. You can't expect to be able to swim just like me in one day." "I know, it's just that." He looked serious. "Just what?" "Nothing." He looked at me. "It's personal." "Oh, right," I said. "And we agreed to keep this strictly professional." I looked away, wishing we didn't have to have such a wall between us. "Something like that." He got up and went over to where he'd put his shirt. I followed, keeping the towel wrapped around me. Besides his near brush with drowning, I couldn't understand what bothered Luke. I wanted to know what he hadn't finished telling me. What was he so worried about? "I'll see you tomorrow?" I asked, hoping he wasn't ready to quit. "Sure, boss," he said and turned to walk away, the first time in a while not singing a tune. Needless to say, the first session in the pool hadn't gone well. There was something holding Luke back, and I wanted him to trust me. Every time I thought we were getting closer, having fun, making progress, something flipped, and Luke pulled away. After finishing up with Luke, I drove to old Mrs. Rose's small, 2-bedroom bungalow on the south side of LA for a training session. She didn't pay the big bucks, but it was a steady paycheck, and I liked the old woman. If you're thinking that it's insulting that I call her old Mrs. Rosa, she insisted on the name, thought it made her sound more formidable. While we were in her living room marching in place with 5-pound dumbbells, I asked about her only son. "He's doing great. Going to graduate school," she said in her characteristic nasally voice. "His work is paying for it. The only thing wrong with my Oscar is that wife of his." "What did she do now?" I asked, knowing almost anything the poor daughter-in-law did, old Mrs. Rosa, who had been a widow for the last 10 years, would complain about. "She bought a poodle." Old Mrs. Rosa sneered, lifting her nose as she continued to march. "One of those little teacup ones. Dressed it in a little tutu." "Ahoo," I responded. "Sounds like she just needs to have a baby or something." "Oh no, not yet. My Oscar needs to finish graduate school first." She nodded matter-of-factly. "So then maybe the poodle's a good thing?" "My Oscar can't be seen with a poodle in a tutu," she said, putting her weights down and petting one of her fluffy cats. "He's an accountant. It would cause a stir." I chuckled a little. Old Mrs. Rosa was not only a cat person, she was constantly concerned about her son's image, when in fact, I'm pretty sure no one in his office cared. "What's up with you, sweetie?" she asked. I started leading her in some stretches. "Oh, not much. I got a new client," I said. "Oh yeah? Who?" We stretched our arms. "Just some actor," I said. "You probably don't know him." I didn't think old Mrs. Rosa would know who Luke was anyway. She mostly watched the news followed by Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy before heading to bed. "Oh, an actor. Is he fetching?" I thought for a moment. "He's great," I said. It sounded lame even to me. "You're blushing a bit." Old Mrs. Rosa pointed at my cheeks. "No, it's strictly professional," I assured her. "And I have to keep it a secret." She nodded. The last thing I needed was for the whole world to learn about our arrangement and break Luke's trust. "But if he offers to sleep with you, you shouldn't say no, sweetie. Get it while you can." I laughed. "Old Mrs. Rosa, that's dirty talk." I whacked my finger at her. "I can see you like him, what's wrong?" She picked up her orange tabby cat and stroked his back. "I'm not sure. There's something bothering Luke, and he won't tell me." "Luke? Luke Mulligan? From that adventure movie?" "Oh no, I let it slip. I didn't mean to. I didn't even think old Mrs. Rosa would know him. I hope she wasn't the gossiping type." "How do you know him?" I asked. My Oscar, he showed me the movie. Well, anyway, he can't be interested in a girl like me. I think he might have a girlfriend who's much more beautiful. Oh, get over it, sweetie. She looked me over. You're a catch. I shook my head. Old Mrs. Rosa could be such a hoot. He made it clear, however, it's a professional relationship. Don't tell anyone. Does he have a poodle? She asked. No, I said. That's good. She put the cat down and put her hand on my shoulder. Well, if you want him to open up to you, try opening up to him first. Old Mrs. Rosa was right. It wasn't only Luke who acted guarded. Every time we met up, it seemed there was something I was hiding or something I was trying to prove. Maybe I just needed to be more myself. If I showed Luke the real Stella, he just might open up. And if that doesn't work, she added, just get naked. I felt better after leaving old Mrs. Rosa's. Even though she could be critical about her daughter-in-law, she genuinely cared about people. When I passed Luke's billboard that afternoon, I winked and blew a kiss. Professional or not, I needed to unlock Luke's secret. Chapter 13 All in. For my next session with Luke, I decided to take old Mrs. Rosa's advice and open up a little. Instead of a raft, I brought a kickboard. This time I tried not to worry about what I looked like in a bathing suit and hopped in the water. Again, we started with Luke kicking while holding onto the wall. We can try the kickboard. It should hold you better than the raft, I said. Luke looked skeptical at the hard blue board I placed in front of him. I demonstrated how he could start by holding it under his chest and kick. I handed him the board and he kicked along the wall. When he started to feel more confident, he ventured further into the middle of the pool while I swam beside him. Soon he was holding the board out and dipping his head in like he had been on the wall. For a brief moment, he lost control of the board, and he popped his head up with a panicked look on his face. When he realizes the board had just floated a little in front of him, he grabbed it and kicked safely back to the wall. After his scare, he insisted on stopping. Afterwards, we sat on 2 deck chairs toweling off. You're really making some improvements. I draped the towel over my shoulders like a cape. How did you learn to swim so well? He asked. My dad taught me. And Daniel actually, I said. Daniel's dad wasn't around much. My dad would take us to the pool, throw us up real high in the water. We loved it. He'd come to every swim meet and cheer us on. Seems like a great guy. Luke smiled at me. Yeah, he was. He was always there for me, so when he hurt himself I was there for him. What do you mean? He injured his leg. I paused, wondering if I should reveal so much to Luke, but like old Mrs. Rosa said, I needed to open up. I dropped out of college before getting my degree so I could help him. My mom couldn't do it alone, she had to keep working. I thought about finishing school later after he died, but the bills piled up. Then Daniel started this business. I guess I just thought I could still help people this way. What did you study? Physical therapy. No wonder you knew what to do with my hamstring, he said, nodding. I shrugged. I miss him. I know what you mean. Luke's face looked saddened. How so? I asked. It's nothing. I can see something's bothering you. You can trust me, but I don't want to pry. I just think it might help me know how to train you in the pool. He looked at his feet, a pained expression on his face. I had a sister, Cassidy. We lived with my parents in a house. Not this nice but pretty nice with a pool in the backyard. He paused for a minute, and I was unsure if he would continue. She drowned. How old was she? I was 5, she was 2. Oh, Luke. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to say. I could hear the strain in his voice as he continued. We moved pretty soon after. To a house without a pool. He started twisting his hands in a nervous gesture. I never learned to swim. Never wanted to be near the water. He looked out over the pool. Now I think I owe it to her. I took this movie role in honor of her. I think that's great, Luke. He looked up at me, finally able to meet my gaze. Now I realize it's a lot harder to learn to swim when you're an adult. So I told Katie, I'm donating half my salary to getting swim lessons for kids who can't afford them. That's a great idea. I patted the back of Luke's hand in sympathy. He turned over his palm and cupped my fingers. It felt natural and warm, my hand in his. We sat there silently for a minute before he let go and stood up. How about tomorrow we go to the beach? I asked. I have something I want to show you. The beach usually isn't my thing, he said. But I trust you, boss. Good. You won't be disappointed. I finally felt like Luke and I connected. That day there was no hiding. No competition, just Luke and I swimming and getting to know each other. Michelle suggested we deserved a night out after all her studying and my breakthrough with Luke. I agreed, and we headed to a bar, Soledad's, we frequented fairly regularly. Wearing a pair of black jeans, a shimmery silver top and some booties, I actually thought I looked pretty attractive. Michelle donned a slim black skirt with a small purple sweater. Together we looked like two fashionable young women ready to have some fun. We like to get dressed up and strut our stuff now and again, planning to meet up with some friends at the bar. We arrived at Soledad's, a vibrant bar that attracted both regulars and tourists and hosted karaoke every Friday, one of Michelle's favorite pastimes. By the time we reached the bar around 9, many of the karaoke regulars were already there along with plenty of other patrons we'd never seen before. The buzz of people talking and drinking filled the room along with the smell of beer and sweat. Michelle and I ordered drinks and sat at a table, talking with some other people we knew. A man in a beard performed an excellent rendition of a Lady Gaga song, garnering a raucous applause. Next, a group of young women sung a ballad off-key. A woman in cowboy boots belted out a country favorite, and then they called Michelle's name. Our table cheered, and once Michelle reached the refrain, we jumped up and started dancing in front of the stage. I swayed my hips and lifted my arms, enjoying the music and the atmosphere. Michelle was slaying the rock ballad she'd chosen, and I was having a good time. As I walked back to the bar with our other friends, a man at a table I passed slapped my butt and said, "Looking good, baby." I swung around, took his pint of beer that was 3/4 full, and dumped it on his lap. "Don't touch me again," I said. The man sat stunned, looking at his two friends next to him. "What the hell, can't compliment a lady?" one responded as the man grabbed some napkins to soak up the liquid on his crotch. "You want a drink in your lap too?" I mocked. Michelle, seeing the commotion when she came off the stage, ran towards the table and continued to escort me back to our group. "What happened?" she asked. "That perv slapped my butt," I said as we sat down. "What's gotten into you?" I sighed. "I guess I'm just sick of taking crap from men." "Is this about Luke?" I shook my head. "No. We held hands today, just for a minute, but it felt so good. Our hands fit so well together." "You mean your man hand and his actual man hand?" she asked, trying to be funny. Yes. I held my glass with both hands, looking over at her. "Oh, Michelle, how am I ever going to keep our relationship strictly professional when all I can think about is how sexy he is? And now I learn, he wants to donate money to helping underprivileged kids learn how to swim." That's so nice." "I know." I threw my hands up in mock disgust. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but sometimes you can be such a bold badass, and I think you should go for it with Luke. Kicking butt is fun, love is harder." I was frustrated. I wanted to keep the job with Luke professional, but how could I when I felt like I was falling for him? One thing I knew for sure, now that I understood Luke's reasoning for wanting to swim, I wanted to help him even more. I was all. Chapter 14. Sure thing. Clouds covered the sun when I met Luke at a local LA beach popular with the surfing crowd. Near the coast, surfers hung on their boards, waiting for the next wave. As the waves crashed into shore, I sat on a blanket in the sand. Luke looked out at the water, the surfers bobbing with each swell and the waves pounding the shore line. "I don't know how you think I'm going to get in there," Luke said as a wave crashed hard into the sand. "It's okay, it's not that rough today. We'll go slow. Let's just get our feet wet." Luke pulled off his shirt, revealing his ever-hunky frame. I would never get bored of watching his broad chest and strong arms gleam in the sun. I loved the salty smell of the ocean mixed with the earthy smell of sand almost as much as I loved peering at Luke's handsome form. Putting them both together made me feel energized. I wore my best two-piece, not quite a bikini, more like a sport top and matching bottoms in black lined and hot pink, my frame a little tighter since I'd been training Luke. Michelle made me promise to release my fears and have fun. I couldn't hide myself from Luke forever. Like Luke, I took off my t-shirt and left it crumpled on the blanket along with my shorts. I stuck my toe in the water as a wave slinked up on the shore. It felt chillier than I expected, and I lurched back. Luke did the same. Soon we stood ankle-deep in the surf. I kicked water at Luke, who turned and kicked back. I tried to jog away and he followed. As he chased me, I thought about how much I enjoyed his company in addition to his brawny body. "I'll get you," he said. "No, you won't," I panted as I looked back. I sprinted on top of the wet sand where it was more solid under my feet. Luke gained on me with every step, but I kept running. In only a few yards he caught up to me, grabbed my arm and flung me in the water so that I fell on my butt in a wave. Not one to submit to defeat, I got up and wrapped my arms around Luke's legs, tackling him in the surf. We both laughed as I got to my feet. A wave rolled in and splashed against Luke's back. "You know, normally I'd be afraid of these waves," Luke said as he stood up. "But I feel safe with you here, even if I have to watch my back." We waded out a little further, the surf hitting our midsections. The water started to feel more comfortable, the sun peeking out of the clouds. As we braved the waves, I watched Luke looking out at the horizon. I wondered if he was thinking about the accident with his sister. And then another thought nagged at my mind. Maybe he was thinking about Gina. Pushing that thought out of my mind, I reminded myself of my renewed goal to teach Luke how to swim. So far, looking at how he was enjoying the ocean, I knew I was on the right track. Now that you're more comfortable in the water, we can try something else, I said. Sure, boss, he said as he followed me back to shore. I picked up one of the boogie boards I'd brought. This is just like a big kickboard, I said. No way, not out there. Luke shook his head.
No.
Not out there. I watched as a surfer floated on the crest of a wave only to crash into the white foam a second later, pummeled by the force of the water. We'll start a little easier. Luke grabbed the other boogie board, and we walked back to the water. I lay down, my head and legs hanging off either end of the board. Luke laid next to me just out of reach the waves. We waited like that for a minute or two before a wave reached our boards, the water jettisoning around us. See, I said. Luke nodded. Now just a bit deeper. We walked in a little further, and as another wave receded, I quickly put my board down. Luke did the same. That time, a wave came in and lifted our boards a few inches, propelling us a few feet forward into the sand as the wave trailed back out to sea. Luke smiled. We repeated the process, walking into the place where the wave receded, hopping on our boards and riding in the wave. Good. You've got it. Let's try a little bit deeper, I said. Luke followed me into the waves a little further, stopping just in front of the breaking point. You just have to jump on the board at the right moment. As the white froth of a wave slithered toward me, I laid on my board, cruising into the shore. I walked back out. A wave rolled in and I signaled to Luke to give it a try. Unfortunately, he put his board down a second too late. As the wave crashed into him, he rolled off the board. Because we were still so shallow, he was able to stand without much trouble. Just a smidge too late, I said, holding my thumb and pointer finger out to indicate what I meant. Luke nodded, his shoulders shining in the emerging sun. He tried again and this time pushed off at precisely the right moment, riding into shore. Yeah, that was fun. He smiled and walked toward me. We practiced riding on the foam into shore, sometimes only inches apart. Want to try a little further? I think you can still stand past the break. Luke looked out at the waves for a second, then nodded determinedly. We trudged out, waves breaking further and further up our bodies as we passed the point where the waves crested and crashed. Luke started to look nervous even though the water was calmer out there and he, unlike me, could still stand. I always loved getting just past the break, where I could bob up and down with the water, not worried about a breaking wave. This time you'll have to push off a bit and kick. You want to get on the wave just as it crests and crashes, pushing you ahead of it. Wait here. I'll show you, I said. Once a wave surged, I faced the shoreline with my board in front of me. I pushed off from the bottom and kicked until the wave caught me, rising beneath my board, and propelling me along the water. When I reached the shore, I turned and waved. Then I battled the surf back out to Luke. We watched the waves and I helped him ready his board. When I saw a swell developing a distance away, I prepared Luke. Okay, here it comes. Now, I yelled. I pushed his board as he pushed off. Kick, I called so he'd stay in front of the wave and avoid it crashing on his body. He did as instructed. Luke crested on top of the wave which then fell, Luke gliding into shore. I caught the next wave and met up with Luke. Once standing on solid ground, I raised my arm for a high five, Luke smiling at his accomplishment. Instead of returning my gesture, Luke wrapped his arms around me for a hug. Our wet bodies melded into each other, and I enclosed my arms around Luke's glistening back. Despite being wet, the heat between us warmed my body and my heart. Before letting me go, Luke swiped my legs from under me with his foot. He caught me so I wouldn't fall too hard and let me down in the sand. I just had to get you back for that tackle, he said. I didn't know if he had wanted to hug me, feel my body against his, or if it was all a ruse to tackle me. And what about Gina? I wanted to know, but how could I ask? He grabbed my hand and pulled me to my feet. We sat on the blanket wrapped in our towels watching the surfers. Thanks again, Stella. I don't think I would have been able to do this with anyone else. Those words delighted me. Whatever happened between us, I was going to help Luke with his goal. Our peaceful moment was quickly ruined, however. Luke noticed a man taking pictures of us from afar, and a woman watching us in a telephoto lens. Another staring at us, his black camera in hand. The paparazzi had found us. Chapter 15 Paparazzi Pictures. After noticing the cameras, Luke grabbed the blanket and his clothes and ran toward where we parked. I rushed after him. Luke looked annoyed and tense that the media was following us. He waved by, and I scurried to my car with my clothes. I was disappointed our day had to end so abruptly. We were having so much fun and Luke progressed with his fear of the water. Throwing my clothes over my bathing suit, I peered in my rearview mirror. My cheeks looked flushed, partly from our run and partly because when I thought about Luke's arms around my body I grew hot. With some extra time, I decided to run some errands, trying to forget Luke's panic over the sudden appearance of the paparazzi. When I met Michelle at home later, she sat, as usual, on the tan couch in our living room with her computer on her lap. "Hi," I said and tossed her a small bag of chocolate-covered pretzels, her favorite study snack from the bags of groceries I plopped on the counter. "Thanks," she looked up. "You're welcome," I said in a chipper voice. "I'm so shocked you're so calm about it." She looked at me surprised. I sat down next to her. "About what? You didn't see?" she asked as she opened the bag of pretzels. "I've been out all day busy doing errands. What's up?" I stole a pretzel from her bag and popped it in my mouth. "This." She turned her screen toward me. It featured 2 photos. One of me and Luke sitting on the beach, my thighs looking bumpy and huge, and another of him hugging me with the tagline, "Beach Romance for Luke Mulligan and Mystery Minx." I was stunned. I had never seen my thighs featured so prominently on screen, especially for such large numbers of people to see. Oh no, I look horrible. I brought my hands to my face. And poor Luke. That hug was just a trick. We had been playing on the beach and I tackled him. Then later he hugged me, only to trip me over a second later. Here's another. Michelle scrolled to another webpage with the caption, "Luke and trainer getting cozy." Stop. I can't look at anymore. Hey, how do they know I'm his trainer? I didn't tell anyone and the only one who knows is Daniel, right? Right, I said assuredly. Well, I told old Mrs. Rosa too. You what? I thought she wouldn't even know who Luke Mulligan was. I accidentally let it slip. I buried my face in my hands. Oh no, you don't think she leaked this, do you? No one knew we were going to the beach though. They must have followed Luke there. Great. Luke won't be happy the paparazzi have a picture of him with my thunder thighs. I'm not sure what's worse, that they know I'm training him, or that my cellulite will be seen by millions of Luke Mulligan fans. You don't look that bad. She twisted her head to get a better angle. And the news had to get out sometime about you training him. You do look quite cozy though. She winked at me. I gave her a look of disgust. I told you already what happened. Yeah, I don't buy it. That hug looks pretty real to me. Since when do you believe the paparazzi over your best friend? I threw a pillow at her and laughed. Seriously though, I'm mortified. I hung my head. No, really, I'm proud of you. For what? I didn't do anything. You didn't have to take this challenge. And look at you, in public with a handsome movie star in a bathing suit. That's progress. She put her arm around my shoulder and squeezed me to her. Perked up a little. You should have seen him riding in waves. He used to be completely afraid of the water. Now I have him boogie boarding. See? She turned her head at me. I remember after that whole thing with Ryan blew up, you didn't even wear shorts for almost a year. I guess. I sighed. At least I'm in better shape now. You've come such a long way. I know your dad would be so proud of what you're doing teaching Luke to swim. And I'm proud you're finally getting out and shaking what your mama gave you. She got up and danced her butt in my face, wagging and swaying. I looked at her, trying not to cry. She was right. My dad would be proud. After he died, I relied too much on Ryan and food to make me feel better. This gig with Luke was not only helping with my finances but also my self-esteem. I took a deep breath, grabbed Michelle's computer, and looked at the pictures more closely. It did look like Luke was really into me. I replayed some of the moments from earlier that day in my head. Luke was making progress with his swimming, and we were starting to enjoy each other's company more. I handed back the computer. I prayed it wasn't my fault the information about me training Luke was leaked to the paparazzi. I'd rather have 100 close-ups of my curves plastered on the gossip rags if it meant Luke wouldn't be mad at me. And if it wasn't old Mrs. Rosa who leaked the information, who was it? I could take the embarrassment of unflattering photos. What I couldn't bear is the thought that it was all my fault they existed at all. Chapter 16 Red Carpet Worries. When I arrived at Luke's place for our next training session, Lyle again greeted me wearing tailored violet pants and a paisley button-down with a hot pink bow tie. Hello, honey. Cool me. He motioned me in as if he was in a hurry. You really need to get Luke slimming down some more, he said in a hushed tone. Luke strode into the foyer area wearing a suit that was a little too tight in the chest, the pants oddly hugging his thighs. Next, Lyle said and pointed back toward the hallway. Luke turned and marched back in the direction he came from. And honey, you need some new clothes yourself. He looked me over and pointed at me from head to toe. I know someone at Couture Athletica who can get you some things. I'm just the trainer. I just need something to work out in. I protested, looking down at the navy yoga pants I wore along with the white short-sleeve shirt. Oh no honey. If you are going to be in my presence, you need some couture athleisure. There's a thing called couture athleisure? Well, there is now. I'll have some samples sent over. You're a plus size, right? I could feel my anger boiling. I knew Lyle's job was to make people look nice, but he didn't have to insult me. I'm a 10, I said. I'm muscular. The next minute, Luke came in wearing a suit that was far too loose this time, the jacket drooping at the shoulders. I hoped he hadn't heard me announce my size. Now this one's too big, Lyle said to Luke as he pinched the fabric from one of Luke's shoulders. He shook his head. It's just more work. The red carpet's coming up and we have to have something tailored pronto. You know you need to look good. Your paparazzi pics with Miss Trainer here weren't all that flattering. He nodded his head my way. About that, said Luke. I'm sorry, Stella. Lyle continued to circle Luke as he stood still with his arms out like a scarecrow as Lyle pinned the jacket in places. I should have warned you that could happen. I didn't think the paparazzi was following me that day. Don't worry. My people will put out a statement letting everyone know we are in no way together. Don't worry about it. I flicked my hand as if it were no big deal when actually I was hurt by Luke's comment. I knew we weren't together, but he didn't have to say it like that. What I can't understand though is how they knew you were my trainer. I looked away, feeling guilty it might have been old Mrs. Rosa. Anyway, now that those photos have gotten out, and I looked less than chiseled, Lyle and I are trying to make sure I appear in tip-top form for this red carpet appearance I have coming up. Luke put his arms down. It's just that I have this event for the last movie I filmed that's coming out. I gained some weight for it, as you know. He pinched a portion of his belly flab. I get it. It's part of your job, I said, wanting the conversation to end. I considered for a moment whether I should tell Luke about revealing our secret to old Mrs. Rosa. I preferred he hear it from me if in fact she had been the leak. But before I could say anything, another of Lyle's comments threw me off kilter. And being seen with someone tall and thin could help your look, Lyle chirped at Luke. Obviously Lyle didn't mean me. He meant someone the very opposite of me, Gina. Yeah, I know. Luke rolled his eyes. Image is important. I'm working on it. Go take that off and work on your physique. I'll try to order a custom fit. And I'll get the sample gowns ready for you know who, said Lyle. I knew then that Luke was planning to take Gina to the red carpet event. Not only did I feel fat and frumpy thanks to Lyle's comments, I also felt crazy for ever believing Luke might be interested in me. When I get mad, I used to reach for a package of Oreos or a bag of chips. I'd started making healthier choices by then, but boy, I knew I needed to keep my anger contained another way. I had to channel my frustration in another direction. I headed to the workout studio fuming. Plus size, in no way together, I mumbled under my breath. The money I had already earned training Luke put a big dent in my credit card bill and student loans. So much so that the collection agents were no longer lighting up my phone. I couldn't afford to lose the job, nor did I want to. I just didn't know if I could handle the Hollywood hijinks that came along with being associated with Luke Mulligan. In just the past few days my thighs had unflatteringly been plastered all over the internet. Luke's stylist suggested I was fat and needed a new wardrobe. And to top it all off, I was apparently competing with one of the most beautiful goddesses on the planet for Luke's affections. I needed to let off some steam. Chapter 17 Boxing Beauty. Luke met me in the workout studio after changing into gray sweatpants and a tight black Nike workout shirt that accentuated his bulging chest muscles. He was already getting slimmer, yet maintaining his strong build. But thanks to Lyle's comments, I planned a scorching workout for the both of us. I started by having Luke complete a circuit of punches and kicks on a large hanging boxing bag. Some jump rope, box jumps, and finally rope slams. Luke kicked and punched while I jumped and slammed. We alternated between exercises without much discussion until we were both soaked with sweat and needed a break. You're really nailing it today, Luke huffed. Yeah, well, got to get you looking good. I got to the floor and positioned myself in a plank to work on my core. Luke breathed a heavy sigh and planked beside me. Don't listen to Lyle. He knows fashion and not much else. Luke grunted a little, looking as though he was about to collapse. I held my body upright in the plank, drawing on my irritation to stay steady. You're not the only one whose body was plastered on the internet for everyone to see. Luke dropped down while I stayed up in the plank. I said I'm sorry about that. I dropped to my knees. I know my body's not perfect. I'm working really hard at it. I stood up and stopped talking, my head down. I knew if I continued I'd say too much, maybe something I'd regret. Hey, Luke said, standing up and trying to look in my eyes. I know how it is. I picked up some boxing gloves, put them on, and handed Luke a pair of padded mitts to hold while I threw punches at them. I jabbed and hooked as Luke took the blows with the mitts. No, you don't know how it is. I landed a cross that made Luke take a step back. You're Luke Mulligan, the famous movie star who everyone thinks is so hot. You have no idea how it is for someone like me, struggling with my weight. I threw a combination cross uppercut. Okay. Luke put the mitts down, but I hadn't noticed and threw one more forceful cross which landed hard on Luke's chest. Ow, he groaned. Sorry, I said. I threw off the gloves and came over to Luke, who was bent over. Are you okay? You hit hard. Yeah, you don't need to remind me, tough man hands here, I said. Luke stood up, seemingly fine. I'm sorry. I guess I deserved that. Sometimes I guess maybe some of Lyle has rubbed off on me. The truth is I took my last role because I want to be more than just an action hero. I was attracted to the role not only because I had to gain weight to play the character, but also because I could show I have acting chops. You aren't the only one who's insecure sometimes. Really? What are you insecure about? I asked. What if everyone thinks I stink? I want the film to be successful, sure, but I hope my performance touches people. Such a good story. That's why I've been so fixated on looking good. I need the buzz about the film to be positive. He sat down on the weight bench. I chuckled. You're a great actor. You have more to offer than a good body. I'm glad you think so. I sat down next to him, taking a sip from my water bottle. Who cares about the red carpet? If I don't look good now, I'm afraid no one will go see the movie. I looked at Luke. I hadn't considered that Luke had hang-ups too. Of course, I already told you why I accepted my next role in memory of my sister. It just so happens that I also have to be shirtless for a lot of it, so. I realized that Luke could be insecure just like I'd been. I needed him to understand, though, how much the paparazzi and Lyle's comments hurt. I told you how my dad died, right? But after that I put on a bunch of weight. Grief eating, I guess they call it. I was vulnerable. Luke nodded in understanding. It takes a lot longer to take off the weight than put it on, I said. Stella, I think you're beautiful. I smiled at Luke. Goo. Beautiful. What more could I want? Where is he? I heard a shrill woman's voice ask before I could say something in return to Luke's compliment. Luke stood up as if caught hiding something naughty from a strict teacher. Back there, I heard Lyle instruct. Oh, there you are, said Gina as she popped her head in the workout studio. She entered and twirled around in a glittery pale pink gown that looked custom-made for her slender frame. How do I look? I don't think this one is quite right, she said, tugging it a bit at the hips. She walked up to Luke, who kissed her on the cheek. Lyle has a cool red one with a cape I'm going to try next. She spun around. Come see. She walked out and down the hall. My anger returned. Not only were Luke and I having another heart-to-heart, he had just called me beautiful. And of course, the moment was ruined by Luke's goddess of a girlfriend. I better go. I shoved my water bottle back in my bag and tried to hurry out when Luke stopped me. Hold on. I have something for you. He handed me a small box. In my haste to leave, I put it in my bag with the water without opening it. Bye, I called as I almost jogged down the hall. I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. I definitely didn't want to see Gina looking gorgeous. What had Luke given me? It wasn't until I was back in my car that I realized how much I was falling for him. Chapter 18, Out of Reach. Once in my car, far enough away from Gina and the whirlwind that seemed to be surrounding Luke, I opened the box he thrust in my hand before leaving. Inside lay a beautiful seashell about as big as my palm, perfectly scalloped with purple edges. Also inside lay a note. Dear Stella. I picked this up the day we were at the beach together. I'm sorry it got cut short. I had a lot of fun with you. It meant a lot to me that you brought me to one of your favorite places. I never liked the beach much because of what happened with Cassidy and my fear of water, and I hope this shell helps remind you of the fun we had and how you've helped me so much already. Fondly, Luke. I couldn't believe it. After what I just witnessed with Gina, how could he write me such a sweet note? Why was he toying with my emotions? I read the note again. It didn't actually say anything too romantic. It was more like a note of gratitude. Still, I thought about what it meant, or what I wanted it to mean. Obviously, I was having trouble drawing the line between wanting a romantic relationship with Luke and having a professional relationship. Now that he had opened up to me, I wanted to support his goal of learning to swim even more than before. But how could I continue to train him when I could tell I was falling in love with him. Just wasn't going to work. Every time we became closer, something pulled us apart. Gina, the paparazzi, my insecurities. I sighed, tired of playing games. And I didn't know how Gina fit into the picture. I couldn't compete with her beauty and popularity. If Luke needed sizzling eye candy for his next red carpet appearance, Gina was clearly his go-to girl. But were they more than that? I couldn't tell. I drove over to Sunset Fitness to check in with Daniel. He sat at his computer in his closet office, probably looking at porn when I walked in. "How's it going, Stella?" he asked. "Ugh, I guess." His office was so small there was barely room for me to stand inside with his small desk. "I just finished a boxing circuit with Luke." "Oh, how's that going?" "I saw the beach pictures." He winked at me. I rolled my eyes. "The beach was fine, thank you. Actually, Luke has really improved his swimming ability." I popped a piece of gum in my mouth from Daniel's stash on his desk. I really wanted a cupcake, but peppermint gum would have to do for now. "Yeah, and the money's been good for both of us. At least you've gotten those collection agents off your back," Daniel said. "I know. It's just that." "What?" "I'm falling for him. I can't keep training him." "What are you talking about?" Daniel stood up and walked around the desk to stand next to me. "You've always had a crush on Luke Mulligan. What's so different now? Of course you're falling for him. You must have fallen and hit the floor with your head." He put his hand on my forehead as if examining it for scrapes and bruises. I smirked at him. "Real funny. No, I mean I don't just have a celebrity crush on him. I have a real crush on him." "I'm not sure I follow." "It's real now. My emotions are real. Before it was pretend. I'm not in love with Luke Mulligan the movie star. Just Luke." "But he is Luke Mulligan the movie star." Daniel still looked confused, trying to make sense of what I was trying to tell him. I slapped my forehead in frustration. Of course Daniel wouldn't understand. He believed almost any girl he hit on would follow him to bed, maybe not the very rich and famous ones, although he'd slept with his fair share of actresses. To not be able to determine if Luke was actually interested in me, or if his affections were just friendly and professional, was toying with my emotions. It's just that he says things and does things sometimes that make me think we could actually be a couple. A great couple. Oh, now I get it. Before, you just wanted to shag Luke Mulligan the sexy movie star. Now you're actually interested in feelings and stuff, like a real relationship. I nodded. Kind of. And I think Luke might actually believe that too. Or maybe I'm just reading his signals wrong. I don't know. I stood still for a moment, contemplating my next move. I blew a bubble. Even with peppermint gum, I could force a tiny bit of air into the gum on the tip of my tongue, even though it burned a little. Daniel watched for a moment, not knowing what to say. "I think you should train Luke," I said. "It's probably best if I just take myself out of the equation. He's good enough in the pool now. You can probably just help him from the side or bag that up." I pointed to his cast. "Oh no. No." He shook his head. "You are not going to run away again. After all we went through to keep this guy as a client. Breaking into a country club? Nah. I won't let you quit." Daniel walked around to a piece of gym equipment and picked up a discarded towel as if he'd settled the situation. I followed. My anger at Daniel due to his misunderstanding of the situation began to boil. It wasn't that I didn't want to train Luke. I wanted to very much. I didn't think I could handle getting hurt again. Not after what happened with Ryan. You know, after my dad died and Ryan supported me, I trusted him too much. "I can't do it again," I said to Daniel, who kept walking and picked up another used towel. After a few steps, Daniel deposited the towels in a bin and turned to face me. "Stella, part of me wants to hug you and tell you it's going to be okay. You can love again, blah blah blah. But what I think you need now is a good kick in the pants." "I'll kick you in the pants." I turned my foot up and kicked his butt. "How about this? We climb for it." He pointed up at the 50-foot indoor climbing wall the gym had. "With the cast on, you should have the advantage. I win, you keep training Luke. You win, I train him." I considered Daniel's arm. There was no way he could beat me with one arm. No way. "First one to the top of the green wall wins," he challenged. I looked at Daniel's fingers hanging out of his cast. Surely his grip would suffer. I'd climbed the wall before. Daniel had too, but I knew he relied too much on his hanging ability, which was now compromised. "You're on," I said, sticking out my hand so we could shake on it. We harnessed up and stood at the bottom, each hooked into an automatic belay system. The green wall was for intermediate climbers, with the blue and red reserved for advanced, and yellow for beginners. I looked at the top, a bell hanging toward the middle of where Daniel and I would climb. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." I nodded. "Go," he said. I started out well, finding good handholds and pushing myself up the rock. Daniel kept pace, working pretty well without needing his casted arm too much. Halfway up we were neck and neck. At one point, I positioned myself a step ahead as Daniel struggled to find a good hand placement. Near the top, however, he caught up. I thought I could win, and then I could put the emotional roller coaster with Luke behind me. In my last-ditch effort to overtake him, I closed my eyes and jumped for the bell just out of Chapter 19. Ring my bell. Ding. Ding ding. Daniel rang the bell, reaching the top of the rock wall before me. I slipped and remained dangling from my harness. I rappelled down, angry at myself for missing the last rock. Now I'd have to go back to Luke's knowing he preferred a super skinny actress to my muscle-bound frame. You were so close, Daniel said when he met me at the bottom. You've come such a long way. A couple months ago there was no way you could climb that wall. I nodded. You can do hard things, Stella. Now stick to what you're good at and train Luke to swim. I hated to admit it, but he had a good point. Training Luke was a challenge I was good at. He already could catch a wave. If I put my emotions aside and focused on the physical challenges, I could help Luke meet his goals and continue to pay off my debt. I just couldn't let love or lust or whatever it was get in the way. During our next training session one late afternoon, Luke and I continued in the pool. I left my pile of clothes on a deck chair and hopped in the pool wearing my plain black one-piece bathing suit. I encouraged Luke to use the kickboard to kick and stroke with one arm. He motored around the pool, kicking his legs, alternating strokes with his arms while holding onto the kickboard with the other arm. When Luke finished with the kickboard, we stood in the shallow end, the water hitting my chest, Luke's waist. I kicked my feet up and floated on my back to demonstrate for Luke. Floating relaxes me. It's comforting having your body suspended in water, moving up and down with its ripples. Looking up at late afternoon sun, it made me feel more optimistic. Floating allows me to tune out the rest of the world, partly because I can't hear anything except the flow of water while my ears are submerged. That's partly why I didn't hear or see Lyle arrive poolside to throw a tantrum. Apparently, the suit he'd ordered Luke wasn't finished yet, and he had demanded it be delivered yesterday. Luke tried to talk him off the ledge when Lyle also complained about another starlet wearing a similar style to the one they'd picked out for Gina. By the time I finished with my moment of floating solitude, Lyle was throwing my tennis skirt and jacket into the pool, claiming he just couldn't deal with any more ugly in his life right now. I stood up and saw my garments floating on top of the water, Luke telling Lyle he needed a break much like a parent giving an irrational toddler a timeout. She needs to fix her style if she's going to work here, Luke. Lyle called from the pool deck. I stood up, confused as to what had just happened. Lyle, I think you need to leave. I'll handle it. Calm down. Go drink some tea. Luke dealt calmly with the huffing Lyle. What happened? I asked Luke as Lyle stomped away. Oh, Lyle's just on another bender. I told him he needs to chill. I picked up my sopping wet clothes. I'm sorry about that, he said. Lyle's just really passionate about what he does. Too passionate. I wasn't worried about the wet clothes. They dry. But what was I going to wear in the meantime? For LA, the weather was a bit chilly that day, and I didn't particularly want to prance around in my swimsuit. I thought the outfit was at least a little better than my usual. I wore the tennis skirt because it was easy to pull on over my bathing suit, and the jacket gave the look a sporty edge. I looked at the clothes dripping in my hands. I didn't think they were that bad, I said to Luke. They're fine. At least you weren't wearing them to swim this time. I laughed, remembering my stunt to gain Luke's attention at the country club. What am I supposed to wear now? I asked. I'll fix it. Luke sprung out of the pool and grabbed a towel for me, wrapping it around my shoulders as I emerged from the water. I think I can find something for you to wear. I waited on a deck chair, wrapped in a towel until Luke returned with a bundle. I picked out a pair of black sweatpants and a green t-shirt. They didn't fit perfectly but were much better than the get-up I found in the country club locker room. I put them on over my swimsuit hoping to keep warm, but I was still shivering. I forgot to mention thanks for the shell, I said as Luke pulled a maroon t-shirt over his head. Yeah, I'm still so sorry about what happened with the paparazzi. Just then Lyle returned, still fuming. The delivery is lost. This is all going to hell. He walked closer, looking at me. What are you wearing now? You look like a swamp rat. I didn't want to yell back at Lyle, but I couldn't sit there and take his insults. Hey, no name calling, said Luke. You threw my clothes in the water. I stood up to face him. I didn't need Luke to save me. Yeah, honey, they weren't much better, Lyle retorted. So Luke gave me these to put on, I said, getting a bit defensive. I can see that. And your hair. After what happened with the paparazzi, we have to be sure that whenever Luke's seen with anyone, he looks simply stunning, At least until this movie comes out. Lyle, she just got out of the pool. We're not on the red carpet. Luke tried to defend me, stepping between the two of us. Listen, I know I'm not a size 2 like Gina. I know my hair isn't shimmery and perfect all the time. I'm on a limited budget, so my clothes aren't designer. I'm here to teach Luke how to swim. I don't have to be a supermodel to do that. She's a feisty one, Lyle laughed, pointing at me. All right, honey. I'll help you. I'm working on getting you those clothes. He came over to look at my hair. I think Roberto can help with this mop. Thank you, but I don't need your help. Despite the fact that I felt thoroughly embarrassed to have Lyle call out my flaws in front of Luke of all people, I just wanted to get out of there. I started walking across the deck towards the end of the fence where there was a gate that led to a path. I followed it, leaving behind Lyle and his awful comments. I wanted to keep walking forever and never look back, but something made me. Chapter 20, Sunset Stroll. Luke caught up to me. There you are. Stella, I'm so sorry. I noticed he'd put on a hoodie now that the air was getting crisper. It's not your fault. I just feel so stupid. I continued to walk away from Luke's house, not knowing where I was headed. The rocky dirt path led up a small hill along a ridge. I could see some other homes spread out in the distance, but at that point on the path we weren't close to any buildings. I enjoyed being away from people in the open mountainside, at least at that moment. Stupid? Why? He asked. I stopped walking and looked up at him. How could I explain that the people around him made me feel so out of place? Or that his kindness actually made me believe I could be part of his world? That is, until the glamorous celebrity part of that world caught up with me and threw me out. I don't fit in with your world, I said. Oh that, he shrugged it off. Lyle's just Lyle. You know I don't think those things about you, right? He pushed a tendril of hair out of my face. I think your hair's beautiful. All wavy and untamed, kind of like you. He laughed. I continued to walk. Luke followed. At the top of the ridge we looked down on a small valley of grass, rocks and stone. The sun was setting, casting a dim glow on the gorge. It looked so peaceful and calm, seemingly far away from the hustle and bustle of La La Land, when in actuality it was only in Hollywood's backyard. You know, when I first came to Hollywood, everyone thought I was just some stupid guy with muscles, Luke said. I had to really prove I could act too. That's why I really hope this next movie is a success. But it's not just about my fame. The story really addresses something emotional. He held his hand to his heart in a motion that made him appear thoughtful and contemplative. Underneath the physique I have feelings too. I want people to realize that even strong men can be vulnerable. I was sure he had feelings, alright? Feelings for Gina D'Angelo. Despite the picturesque setting, I couldn't help feeling tense, trying to figure out my complicated relationship with Luke. What I saw back there was tough girl Stella. The same one who ran away when I hurt my hamstring and ran away today. No more running away from me, alright? I looked up at him a little embarrassed. I'm just not used to this, okay? I said defensively. I usually don't have people criticizing me about my clothes or the way I look, especially not in the media. I already went through something like that once. I'm not going to do it again. I get it. Ido. I tried to shake my head, but he gently grabbed my chin so I would look in his eyes. Being a celebrity isn't always easy. I want to run away sometimes too. He continued walking beside me, his hand lightly brushing up against my own. That's why I like camping and musicals. They're both great ways to escape real life. Actually, I think they're more genuine. Camping is certainly down to earth and gritty, and musicals, well, who doesn't want to break out in song once in a while? Luke smiled, the setting sun casting a glow around his head. He looked softer, sympathetic. You're right. Luke started singing. His voice sounded deep yet velvety. The melody lilted off his tongue as he sang a verse about being free in the mountains. I could have stood there and listened to Luke for hours. At the end of the phrase, he stopped and replaced his jovial singing face for a serious one. I'm here to listen, he said. Don't run. Just vent. Who hurt you? I took a big breath and sighed. Besides my family and close friends, I had never told anyone what really happened with Ryan. For the most part, people knew about him cheating and using my credit card. What they didn't know, I wasn't sure if I should share with Luke or not. It was so humiliating, but at the same time I really thought Luke might actually understand. We sat down on a rock that looked smooth enough to be a little comfortable, and looked out over the crest of the valley. I had a boyfriend in college, Ryan. He seemed pretty great at first. We'd been together about 1.5 years when my dad re-injured himself, like I told you. Luke nodded, apparently remembering my previous confession. I dropped out of college to help my dad. Then he died, and it seemed like my world ended. It was really hard for me. My mom somehow just kept going to work out with friends. I couldn't get over my dad's death so fast. I gained weight, didn't care about my appearance. I barely went to work. I know I wasn't a great girlfriend. I guess that's why Ryan did what he did. What was that? Luke threw a pebble into the gulch below. I'm pretty sure he didn't break up with me because that would make him look bad, to break up with a girl after her dad died, although I wish he'd been honest. Well, to my face anyway. I kept looking out over the hills, unable to meet Luke's gaze. It was hard remembering how my relationship with Ryan ended. He stayed in college, so soon enough he started hooking up with some sophomore behind my back. I continued. I only found out about it because he left his phone at my place one day, and I noticed a text from his new skinny sorority girlfriend. I started to shake remembering what came next. Luke might have thought I was shivering. He took off his hoodie and draped it around my shoulders. It smelled of Luke's warm musk, and for a moment, I felt relieved to be sharing my story. If that weren't bad enough, I learned there were other texts he sent to her telling her how fat and ugly I'd gotten. What was mortifying is that she forwarded them to her sorority. It became a big joke, her telling everyone how her boyfriend couldn't break up with his cow of a girlfriend until after an appropriate mourning period. And you know what the worst part was? The sorority made a little cow statue with my face on it. One of the sorority pledges felt bad, found out who I was, and told me all about it. I started crying, unable to hold back my emotions. I thought Luke would think I was pathetic. I tried to stop crying, but Luke reached his arms around me and cradled me to his chest. I cried harder. The last thing I wanted to be was a damsel in distress. That's why Ryan cheated on me, because I wasn't strong and pretty anymore. So I tried to push Luke away, but he held me tighter. Stella, I can't believe anyone would do that to you. You didn't deserve that. I buried my face in Luke's chest. I'm sorry. It's okay. Just let it out. I'm glad you told me. I sat back and wiped the tears from my face. Needless to say, I didn't come out of my room for a week. Little by little Michelle and Daniel helped me. Michelle made me move in with her so I could have a fresh start and not be reminded of my dad all the time. My mom's pretty independent anyway. I try to stop by every once in a while. It's still hard. Ryan, the person I loved and trusted, betrayed me. My self-esteem plummeted. That's why it's so hard for me to hear criticism about my body. Stella, you're too hard on yourself. The sun continued to set, moving below the hills. We should head back. The sky looked purple, pink and peach in places as we kicked up dirt along the path. As we walked along, me wearing Luke's sweatshirt, I thought about the fact that I hadn't acted the least bit professional. I hoped Luke wouldn't fire me or tell me we couldn't work together anymore. What he did ask me was what I was least expecting. Chapter 21. Luke's luscious lips. Do you want to stay the night? Luke asked. I looked at him confused. Not like that. I just mean it's getting late. I think my chef's made some dinner. You can get some rest. I have an extra room, he explained. Or 2 or 3, I joked, walking back towards Luke's mansion. We could see it in the distance, lit up from inside, glowing in the darkened landscape. Actually, that sounds nice. I looked up and smiled at him. We walked the rest of the way back in silence, the air starting to chill our hands. Once inside, Luke warmed up the plates his chef left him, including a variety of sautéed vegetables, and the most delicious Tuscan chicken. Along with some salad and roasted potatoes, we ate our food at the small dining table off the kitchen. The home-cooked meal made me feel cozy and warm. I didn't always have a chef, you know? In my early days trying to make it as an actor, I had to cook my own food. It was horrible. I burnt spaghetti, Luke said. But I love to sing in the kitchen. I giggled, thinking about Luke at the stove, singing and starting grease fires. I'm a pretty good cook. I took a bite of chicken. Not such a fantastic singer. Oh yeah? What can you make? I make a mean lasagna and Chinese spare ribs. I love to grill. Luke licked his lips, lapping up some of the chicken's juiciness. I love that confidence of yours. If I couldn't afford to pay someone to prepare some meals for me, I'd be in trouble. I can't stand going out to eat all the time. And with my cooking, I'd pretty much starve. You can't be good at everything. I shrugged and popped a piece of potato in my mouth. Maybe you can teach me sometime? Teach you what? How to make lasagna. Okay, but then you have to teach me how to pitch a tent and start a fire, I said. He nodded. It's a deal. When Luke suggested we go to his home theater to watch a movie, it felt like a natural progression to the night. In connecting lounge chairs, we watched one of Luke's favorite comedies. He laughed every 5 minutes. Although I didn't think it was that funny, I got a kick out of watching Luke chuckle at every pratfall silly joke. After the movie, he showed me to the guest room, which also had a connecting bathroom. Thanks for a lovely evening. he said. I never intended this night to end like a date, I said. I don't think I've ever been more underdressed for dinner and a movie. I indicated the sweatpants, t-shirt, and hoodie I still wore. Luke laughed. I didn't want to give back the hoodie, wanting to keep it on all night, the smell of Luke wafting into my dreams. But I unzipped it and handed it back anyway so I wouldn't seem like a crazy stalker. I don't know what all the hype is about with designer clothes, he said. I think the sexiest outfit is an old t-shirt. I blushed, hoping he meant what he said. I promise from here on out to act strictly professional, I said. Luke and I were standing just a foot apart by the doorway. He seemed to be lingering, hesitating for just a moment. Then he put his arm around my waist and pulled me close to him. He looked in my eyes and said, "Promises are meant to be broken," and kissed me on the lips. I let his lips linger on mine, the delicate skin feeling moist and soft. My body sank into his as he held me against him. The kiss lasted a few seconds at least. It wasn't just a little peck. I never wanted it to end. With Luke's body against mine and his lips caressing my own, I felt cherished. When I pulled away, Luke said, "Good night," in his dreamy voice. He walked down the hallway, and I watched as his tight butt swaggered with each step. I braced myself against the doorway, feeling a little weak in the knees. Luke Mulligan kissed me. I couldn't believe it. I scampered into the room and fell onto the pristine white bed, backward as if falling into a pool. After all the embarrassing moments in the last few days, I couldn't believe that kiss happened. I wrapped my arms around the soft white pillow on the bed and looked up at the ceiling, thinking about the kiss. After Luke insisted we keep it professional, saying we were in no way together, what did this kiss mean? My head raced as my body could still feel the warmth of Luke's breath on my face. It wasn't just a smack on the lips either. It was a bona fide kiss goodnight like after a real date. In other words, it might not have been planned, but it was no accident. I rolled over onto my stomach and kicked my legs on the bed like an excited teenager. I couldn't believe I kissed Luke Mulligan. I had to text Michelle. She'd be wondering where I was anyway. I grabbed my phone from my bag, which had somehow ended up next to the bed. Probably Luke put it there earlier after I agreed to stay. After I texted Michelle and read her reply, kissing lips emoji, the worry set in. Tomorrow he'd probably tell me he just got carried away. That it meant nothing. That he loved Gina. It was understandable. I had been so vulnerable, and he had just been trying to make me feel better. That's it. That's probably all it was, I told myself. How I went from feeling so elated about my kiss with Luke to so insecure, I'll never know. I just couldn't shake the feeling that it was all a mistake. It was too late to sneak out, so I resolved to get up early the next morning and leave before Luke was awake. I faded into sleep, thinking of Luke and his sensual mouth on mine. Whatever happened, I'd never forget that kiss. When the sun peeked in my window, I threw off the luxurious white bedspread, went to the bathroom, and tiptoed down the hall, shoes in hand, bag slung over my shoulder. Still wearing the sweatpants and green t-shirt from the day before, I crept quietly. I didn't want to wake Luke. I creeped, nearing the end of the hall. I thought I was home free, and I certainly wasn't expecting who I saw when I turned the Chapter 22. Green juice versus lasagna. Gina, of all people, sat at the large kitchen island clad in designer jeans and a bright red tank top, her long brown tendrils flowing down her back. Red must be her signature color. She drank a green juice from a straw, her phone in her other hand. "Good morning," she said, not looking up from her phone. "I thought we'd get an early start on the day." Okay," I said, still standing at the corner of the hallway. She looked up startled. Seeing me, she made a weird face. Holding my shoes, bag slung over my shoulder, wearing one of Luke's old t-shirts, I wasn't sure what Gina would think. "I thought you were Luke," she retorted. "Early morning workout?" she asked. "Something like that." I tried to be vague. "Where's Luke?" I hesitated, not sure how to answer. "He needed a little rest." I nodded my head, willing her to believe my explanation. "Well, I better go," I said. I knew I had no right to ask her why she was at Luke's so early, although I was dying to know. Somehow she had let herself in. "You know, you really should consider juicing." She pointed to the drink she held on the counter. "It does wonders for my complexion." She brought her hand to her cheek as if modeling a face cream. "I'm sure it would help your figure." Oh no, here we go again. More comments about my body, I thought. How could I get these Hollywood hotshots to leave me alone? "Thanks all the same, but I prefer to actually eat." I decided to leave the comment about my shape alone. "Suit yourself. I've started Luke on it. He looks so much better, doesn't he?" That was a loaded question. If I told her how hot I thought Luke looked, it might seem like I was trying to snag her boyfriend. But was he her boyfriend? Without the necessary information, I decided to tread carefully. He looks great, I said. Perfectly simple answer. But before I left, I asked one more question of the gorgeous Gina, who would be gorgeous with or without drinking green juice. Who's Roberto? She smiled at me, the kind of smile that signals someone knows something you don't. Roberto's a genius with hair. She raised a hand and smoothed her own. He's just one of the best in Hollywood. Really hard to get an appointment with. I'm scheduled to see him tomorrow. My hair's a mess. I looked at her perfectly coiffed hair, shiny and sleek, much unlike my thick and unruly locks. Yeah, you really better get that fixed, I said. She shrugged and took a sip of her juice as I finished my dash to the door before Luke woke up. Clearly not taking Gina's juicing advice to heart, that night I worked on preparing a scrumptious Italian feast for Daniel and Michelle to thank them for all their help. My discussion with Luke gave me the idea to bake them a lasagna, along with a fresh Italian salad and homemade breadsticks. The smell of tomato sauce made me salivate. I love Italian food. And Chinese and Indian and Tex-Mex, well, basically any and all food. No, a juice diet just wasn't for me. As the lasagna cooked, Michelle returned from work looking tired. Once the smell of baked cheese and tomato sauce hit her nose, her face perked up. Lasagna? She asked. Yep, I said. You need to get laid more often. I rolled my eyes. We just kissed. Once. I took a quick look in the oven. I told you we didn't sleep together. I was thinking, she said. Maybe we can leak to the paparazzi that Gina has the clap. Then Luke won't want to go near her, she suggested. She tried to snag a piece of breadstick that was cooling on the counter, but I slapped her hand away. No, I said. I don't know what's up with them, but I can't interfere. My kiss with Luke was probably just a fluke anyway. Luke is no fluke. That kiss was the real deal. I'm sure of it, Michelle said. Well, it sure felt real. I mean, when he held me against him, I felt so comfortable, like my body fit right into his. And it sure was spine-tingling, that kiss he gave me. Oh, girl. I felt an electric current shoot up my spine. I looked up, remembering Luke's lips and hands on me. I wanted that feeling again and again. Don't let those Hollywood phonies get to you. I'm sure Luke likes you because you're attractive, but you're also genuine. Michelle stole a piece of lettuce from the salad bowl before I had a chance to shoo her away. I hope you're right, Michelle. I sighed. How's the studying been going? Okay. My last practice test, I raised my score a little. You'll be ready. I poured her a glass of cheap wine from a box I picked up earlier that day. When's Daniel coming? She took a sip. Fancy, she said, pointing to the wine glass. He'll be here any minute. Probably when he smells the lasagna. 10 minutes later, I pulled the lasagna out of the oven, and the doorbell rang. I threw a knowing glance Michelle's way. See? I told you. I opened the door to find Daniel with a petite blonde under his arm. This is Sadie, he said. I hope you don't mind one extra. I gave Michelle another knowing look and invited them in. Gathered around our small table, I held up my glass. I want to thank you both for all you've done for me. Not just recently with Luke, but for everything after my dad died and Ryan cheated on me. I don't know what I would have done without you. We clinked glasses and each took a sip. Everyone enjoyed the meal. It reminded me of the Sunday dinners I used to have with my parents and Daniel and his mother. And even Sadie didn't seem so bad. She told us about her job as a dental hygienist, complete with a story about a guy who wanted to dye his teeth blue in support of the Dodgers. Hey, Stella. Mind if I turn on the TV to watch the end of the game? Daniel asked. The Lakers were playing the Heat. Yeah, sure. Just don't think you're getting out of helping with the dishes, I said. We were all enjoying each other's company. Besides my run-in with Gina, my last 24 hours had included a fantastic styrofoam date, and an amazing first kiss with my celebrity crush. At home with my crew, I didn't think anything could go wrong. As the Lakers called a timeout and a commercial began to play, I saw Luke's face on a teaser for an upcoming episode of a celebrity news show. There was a clip of Luke talking. I really have to give my trainer, Stella credit for whipping me into shape, he said. I felt a slight pitter-patter in my heart that Luke mentioned me on TV. Then the camera panned out and my mouth dropped open. Luke wasn't the only one in the interview, and his special guest made me want to cry. Chapter 23 Golf Lesson. Standing right next to Luke, his arm around her waist, was, you guessed it, Gina D'Angelo. Doesn't he look great? She said to the camera, looking sultry. I turned off the TV. What is it with those two? I said, practically spitting at the TV. Are they together or not? He kissed me. And then he goes on TV with her. I pointed at the screen. I performed a karate kick at the TV, leaving only a few inches between my foot and where Gina's image had appeared on the screen.
Stella, chill.
It's probably just some publicity stunt, said Daniel. I flopped on the couch. I don't want to be caught up in any stunts. Does Luke like me or not? Is he with Gina or not? I said, sinking into the cushions. The only way to find out is to ask him, said Michelle. Just be straight with him. Me or that hoe bag. I looked at her skeptically. Well, I'll use a different name, but yeah. If I can gather up the courage, I said. You're the toughest person I know. Daniel patted me on the back. Thanks for dinner. Sadie and I better be going now. I was too annoyed I didn't even think about Daniel shirking on the dishes. It didn't matter anyway. The pan needed to soak, and I threw most of the plates in the dishwasher. After Daniel left, I poured myself another glass of wine and sat down with Michelle. I think I need a new job, Michelle said and took a huge gulp of wine. Clearly, I had been so wrapped up in my own tribulations with Luke, I hadn't really noticed Michelle's recent burnout from work. What's up? I asked. My boss found out I plan to go to law school. Now she's adding all this extra work because she thinks that I think I'm above being a paralegal. Can't a girl improve herself? I did. I looked at her. I'm not all the way there yet, but you and Daniel picked me up off the floor. Now look at me spending the night at a movie star's house. We both laughed. I'm going to give you the same advice you gave me. Just be straight with her. I grinned at Michelle. But maybe don't call her a hoe bag. She lightly punched me in the arm. While I was kind of surprised Luke hadn't texted me after our impromptu date, I also understood that maybe he didn't think our kiss was such a big deal. Apparently, he was much busier with other things, namely television interviews with a certain sexy actress on his arm. It wasn't until the next morning that I heard from him. Stella. Looking forward to seeing you again. What's the plan, boss? He texted. At first I wasn't sure how to respond. We were running out of time to get Luke swimming. Shooting for the movie was planned to start pretty soon. At the same time, I wanted to hang out with Luke outside of our usual training sessions. If he just thought of me as his trainer, he might not consider me girlfriend material. Why don't you pick? I suggested, hoping he'd choose an actual date activity. But the question was also open-ended in case he wanted to work out. Why don't you meet me at your fake job, the country club? Don't need a uniform this time. I'll put you on the guest list. If you don't have clubs, don't worry, I'll rent you some. Golfer emoji. Great. Golfing. Mini golf is a satisfactory dating activity. Actual golfing is more like torture. Standing in the sun trying to watch a small white ball fly through the air, hoping it goes toward a small dark hole. Not my idea of the perfect afternoon. But I knew Luke loved to be outside, traversing the manicured lawns, challenging himself to sink the perfect putt. Hopefully, I didn't embarrass myself with my golfing skills, which were certainly not up to par. Michelle helped me pick out my most presentable golf outfit. A pink polo with a white tennis skirt. I even donned a white visor I sometimes wore to the beach for sun protection. Looking my country club best, I set off to meet Luke. On the course I straddled my legs over the ball, leaning over in just the way Luke taught me. I'd been to the driving range only twice before, and didn't really know the proper way to hit a golf ball. I raised my driver, swung my arms back, then lowered them to the ball. It only flew a lousy 30 yards. I looked back at Luke frustrated. That's okay. We'll keep working on it, he said. He teed up his ball and hit it within a few feet of the hole. I swung and putted, chipped and wedged, sometimes out of sand, other times out of tall grass, all along the course. Like usual, the LA sun hung high in the air, with no sign of rain. I wished some dark clouds would roll in and dump a deluge on us so we'd be forced to take refuge. While I didn't want to leave Luke's company, I didn't really want to keep golfing either. I think you just chose this because you knew I'd be bad at it, I said.
No.
No, he said sarcastically. After all, you said it yourself. You can't be good at everything. He started to quietly sing a show tune, possibly to try to mess me up. I smirked at him as he teed up my next ball. I drove it nearly 80 yards that time, and I jumped up and down like I won the lottery. Wow, you didn't even get that excited after we kissed, Luke said. It was the first mention of our night together. I like to play it cool, I said as we walked to our balls, a serious expression on my face. On the putting green, I sank a fairly difficult shot and smiled broadly. I was getting much better already. Plus, Luke had mentioned the kiss, meaning he didn't want to forget about it. Well done, he said.
I'm impressed.
You know, Stella, you've got a beautiful smile. What do I need to do to get you to smile like that more often? I could think of 100 things Luke could do to me that would make me smile. I turned to him. When you swim a lap of the pool by yourself, you'll see that smile. Guaranteed, I said. You've done such a good job training me, Stella. I know I'll be able to do it. I nodded. I wanted to work up the nerve to ask him about Gina. I thought if I knew their status, I could determine if Luke was actually flirting with me or just flattering me so I'd keep training him for his movie. So, I asked as we walked back to the clubhouse. I saw you on TV last night. Oh, he said, kind of perturbed. Thanks for the pub, by the way, I said. I meant what I said. You're doing a great job. He grabbed my arm to stop me from walking further. And I really appreciate it. I guess Gina thinks I'm doing a good job too, since she thinks you look great. I bit my lip, nervous about mentioning Gina to him. You know, part of my job is image. Gina gets attention. I nodded. Yeah, she's beautiful. No, she gets media attention. Exactly. Because she's beautiful. You're beautiful. You're strong and sassy with a smile that could light up the sky. He widened his grin as far as he could in a mock smile. And you challenge me, which I need. But I want to make sure people go see my movie. Gina's helping me with that. Right, so I'm the trusted trainer and she's the... I left my voice trail off after that. I didn't want to call her anything that might upset Luke. For now she's... Well, let's just say we're close. I need to look good on the red carpet. Gina's part of that plan. I didn't dare ask if Gina received warm, luscious goodnight kisses too. I wasn't sure what close meant to Luke. Maybe Luke had been right. We should just keep our relationship professional. In the clubhouse, I noticed a banner marking a celebrity golf tournament raising money for a local nonprofit that helps wounded veterans. Luke's name featured prominently on the banner. Is that for image too? I said, pointing to the banner. I've participated in that charity for years. My father was in the army. But I guess I deserved that, he said. I felt bad. I never would have accused Luke of using a charity for publicity if I hadn't felt threatened by Gina and her beauty. I couldn't be the red carpet bombshell Luke needed. Instead, I'd have to settle for the behind-the-scenes sweat inducer. Out of jealousy, I dreamt about how nice it would be if Gina had to live a day being ugly. Sometimes, even when you don't mean it, your dreams come true.